Welcome back. We're looking at the upcoming presidential election with a group of young African-American voters and examining the prospects for a change in areas such as race relations. As we get back to our discussion, I want you to listen to some excerpts from a report that our reporter Casey Kaufman got when he was actually out in Middle America talking to people about Barack Obama. This is some of the things they had to say.
It's not a Christian. This is a Christian nation. What is our country going to end up like?
When you've got a Negro running for president, you need a first stringer. He's definitely a second stringer.
He seems like a sheep or a wolf in sheep's clothing, to be honest with you. And I believe Palin, she's filled with the Holy Spirit, and I believe she's going to bring honesty and integrity to the White House.
He's related to a known terrorist, for one.
He is friends with a terrorist of this country.
He must support terrorists. You know, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it must be a duck. And that, to me, is Obama.
Obama and his wife, I'm concerned that they could be anti-white, that he might hide that.
I don't like the fact that he thinks us white people are trash.
I throw it open for comments. Anyone? Austin.
I think it's interesting. You're seeing a reckoning in the Republican Party. Since the silent majority of the Nixon era, you saw them put together a coalition feeding on a lot of racist sentiment that's going on in the American South and the Midwest. And now you're seeing that the bloc that is held together in the Republican Party, the conservative Christian bloc, also the racist bloc I was speaking of now, are emerging as a potential problem for the John McCain's candidacy. And I think Barack Obama has kind of heightened those contradictions within the Republican Party, which is why you have people like Colin Powell speaking out, you know, William F. Buckley and others.
I'll get you in a second, but Reginald, you had your hand up first.
I definitely have to disagree with that because, once again, we live in America, and in America, there's so many different facets to it. Everyone are not the same. That's simple.
Didn't it worry you, though? Some of the comments made were very, very...
Of course it worried me. It upset me a little bit, being that I am a black man. But at the same time, I knew that wasn't my whole party. For example, I saw another video on another news outlet, and it was at a McCain rally, and this elderly woman stood up, was calling Barack Obama a Arab. And even though he's not, John McCain took the mic from her, and his exact words were, "Ma'am, Barack Obama is a decent, family-loving man," and stepped away from that.
Ironically, that worked against, and Cameron, if I could put this to you before I get to one of the ladies as well, you said earlier, you know, I asked you about relating to John McCain as a young African-American, I know you see the differences, but what is it that you feel the Republican Party has done to help the African-American community? I mean, it sounds like sometimes the race card has been played, as people say, which works against you.
Absolutely. I'd like to say that the Republican Party has always proposed and supported legislation that supports black entrepreneurship and small businesses within every community. And entrepreneurship and small businesses are the backbones of economics within America, and it's also a key to economic independence. And so on that front, the development of small businesses within the African-American community under Republican policies will help to build a more economically independent sector of our nation, which is the black community.
Let's get the views of Corinne and Legina. Corinne, start with you.
Well, my comments are directed towards this video, and to me it just proved that the Republican Party, for the most part, I personally believe, is driven by fear, and they have been for quite some time now. Those people, that's small town. Small town, there's so many common misconceptions of African Americans. Barack Obama, there's so many things that they believe. He's Muslim, he's saying racial slurs about him. To me, it's just a fear mechanism. And like you said, when you pointed out the elderly woman who said Barack Obama's an Arab, I feel like John McCain totally had lost control of his campaign at that point. He was not controlling those comments. That's the GOP. That's the Republican Party who's influencing these people. So I feel like I commend John McCain on that end, but I believe that the Republican Party is completely driven by fear.
We'll get our comments from our Republican friends in a moment. Legina first.
Yes, and I'm also responding to the video. I think it's interesting, and it's an excellent campaign tactic to throw out a misconception and then to back up and say, oh, we didn't really mean it. While John McCain is saying, okay, he's not an Arab, his campaign, Sarah Palin on the campaign trail was definitely saying Obama's pal around with terrorists, and now you have these people who are like, he's a terrorist. He has a cousin who's a terrorist, which was in the video, and none of that's true. And as much as you can try and deny it, once you put that out there in the first place, it's hard to take it back because people already take that to heart. Like, I really can't trust this man. I can't vote for him and influence everybody else and make up other rumors that aren't true.
Also, an interesting point. I want to get your comments on this, but also the fact that Barack Obama identifies himself as African American, but he's half white. I mean, what do you think he really represents to the African American community?
Well, on the first part, I mean, when you look at race within the Republican Party, you know, basically using the fear of those fear tactics, playing on race, playing on the Muslim thing, as if, you know, being Muslim somehow is equated to being a terrorist. Those are parts of the Republican Party that have been there for a very long time, and they're not going to go away anytime soon. On the issue of Barack Obama being an African American, in this country, like in my own family, I have people who have maybe whites and blacks, but in this country, you're still considered African American. So it's not so much about, again, his identity as an African American, but the fact that we see him being more responsive to the African American community, and also the kind of vitriol and hatred you see against not just African Americans, but Latino voters, but against Muslim Americans. You don't see that coming from the Democratic Party. You see it from the GOP.
Cameron, I know you want to defend the Republicans.
I did. Just in watching that movie, the video clip, I like to say, and I will argue this very strongly, that is not a representation, a fair representation of neither Middle America nor the Republican Party. I believe that within each political party, you can see people who have very extreme views. And to say, and just to respond to my colleagues, to say that the Republican Party uses fear or the fear of race as a tactic, I believe is also unfair, because you also have a lot of liberal politicians who use the same or employ the same mechanisms. For example, you have a congressman such as John Lewis, a civil rights hero, who would bring up the name of a George Wallace, who I might add was a Democrat, and compared John McCain with that. And then that's inciting fear within the African and the minority communities. And I believe that if we're going to look at these samplings of the population, they should be fair samplings, and I do not believe this was fair. And I believe that as viewers and as citizens, as voters, we should look at them very introspectively.
Reginald, as you had your comments, let me also bring in this into the mix. The issue that the Iraq War for many people is still a campaigning issue, and they fear that, you know, that a McCain presidency would keep the USA locked into this conflict, which many people in the country disagree with. Your view on that, and also the fact that the African American community is drawn upon to supply the forces with troops, drawn on heavily because it's a source of employment. It's a way for a community that's not as empowered to get some kind of employment.
Well, I'm going to answer that question in a second, but I'm going to go back really quickly. I know that we've been attacking the Republican Party, whether or not they're using different tactics of fear. But if we look back before they actually got down to that, like, final two candidates, you look at the Democratic primary, Hillary Clinton, John Edwards, all the other candidates were all using different type of media and attacks towards Barack Obama and each other that was using fear, using different type of things as sexism. And, you know, you just got to realize that it's not just one party. So let me get back to the war in Iraq. Now, with the war in Iraq, I definitely agree with John McCain. If we have to be there for another 100 years, unfortunately, that may be the case. But the simple thing about it is, he's not saying we're going to be there for another 100 years. We can't predict what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, or what's going to happen whenever. But what we can do is create different plans to where we can try to start pulling out our troops. Matter of fact, since February of this year, we've already started removing 8,000 troops because of the surge that we've been using that John McCain has put in place, and that Barack Obama has yet to say is actually working. The troops in Iraq actually have said that we have given power over to over 190,000 Iraqis where they can control their different areas. And now we're moving to Afghanistan, which was peaceful but started having a little more uproar. And we're going to use some of the same techniques as the surge, but not all, because there's two different countries with two different problems. But so with the war in Iraq.
Austin.
I mean, I just think that's hilarious. I mean, the fact that you look at what's happening in Iraq, there was a protest of hundreds of thousands against the new security pact with Iraq. George Bush is the most unpopular president and probably, I would argue, in world history. And you look at the kind of chaos that he's caused. I don't think anybody would argue that his foreign policy has benefited this country or stopped the extremism around the world. So if you're using the war in Iraq as somehow to bolster John McCain's case, using the surge as an example, I think that's a losing position. And also, he said there was a little bit of uproar in Afghanistan. we've seen a complete turmoil that's spread across Afghanistan, moving into Pakistan as well. So I think that you've seen a continuation of failed foreign policy that's not humane.
Sorry, go ahead, Cam.
Within the state of Florida, my home state, again, we have another constitutional amendment for the state of Florida that is appearing on this 2008 ballot that is taking into question gay marriage and the position of civil unions in this country. And it's being projected again that that's going to be an issue that's going to be decided upon among the voters of the African American community. And I believe that for many African Americans, the moral issues of gay marriage, abortion, etc., will trump race in their decision making.
Do you feel, by the way, Cameron, that you mentioned Florida, it's one of the states where the people have felt that in the past there has been a lot of voter fraud. Do you worry about voter fraud, which is said to target largely the African American community?
Indeed, that is something that I care a great deal about. I mean, it's something that I do believe a lot of people, voters, African American voters in Florida, are very paranoid about. Again, I do believe that the Barack Obama supporters are going to take the mantra of hope and continue to vote despite of whatever fears they might have of fraud, potential fraud.
Okay, Legina, sorry, you're wanting to add something.
I want you to keep in mind that while race is kind of one of those subconscious issues, it's not something that's being specifically talked about in the media and talked about in this campaign. And a lot of the issues that are being discussed are healthcare, are terrorism, are the war in Iraq, education, healthcare. So while those are taking a seat to issues that were predominant during campaigns for the Bush administration, like gay rights, those issues are still being talked about during the election.
All right, a final thought, Austin.
You know, I was just going to say, it's interesting when you talk about the gay marriage ballots, initiatives, and others, you're seeing a horrendous split within the Republican Party right now. And we didn't really hear those voices reflected today, but a lot of Republicans are also disenchanted with the bigotry and intolerance that you're seeing in certain segments of the GOP. And I think that that's going to play as well into this election.
You know what I should do? Because we've got 3 Democrats and 2 Republicans. Reginald, a final word.
My thing is, no matter who you're voting for, just get out and vote, because right now we need a new president regardless. We're going to have a new president regardless. John McCain's for me, Barack Obama's for some others, but just get out there and vote and make your vote count.
All right, gentlemen, ladies, thank you very much for taking part. Really enjoyed having you say in this.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us. Remember, you can catch this on myspace.com's Impact TV website, and you can send any emails with comments and questions to riz@aljazeera.net. From me and the team, we'll see you next time.